I lean back into the worn chair, one hand wrapped around a steaming mug of tea, the other flipping through a vintage magazine I picked up from the thrift store down the block. November air leaks through every crack in my tiny Minneapolis apartment, biting at my ankles. Outside, the sky is a dull slab of gray, heavy with unshed snow. It's quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting for something. Then the phone rings, slicing the silence. Dad. My breath catches. I tap the speaker button, already bracing for the worst. You don't need to come home for Thanksgiving this year, he says casually, like he's reminding me to buy milk. I blink. I'm sorry. What? We just think it's better if you stayed put. He continues, calm and rehearsed. To keep things peaceful. Mandy's been on edge lately. I set my teacup down harder than intended. The clink of ceramic against wood sounds too loud in the small space. Mandy. Again. My sister. The family's fragile favorite. The one who always got a pass. Whenever she was upset, the rest of us had to walk on eggshells. So, I'm not invited, because Mandy gets tense? I ask slowly, each word deliberate, trying to keep my voice steady even as my chest tightens. He sighs, that sigh. The one that means don't make this a big deal. It's just one day, Emily. You'll be fine. I stand up, the chair creaking beneath me. Just one day. My voice is cold now. You say that after I've sent over $4,800 this year alone just to keep the heat on in that house? Silence. Just the soft hum of the phone line bridging the space between us. Don't bring money into this, he says, suddenly flustered. You offered to help. I laugh, sharp, bitter. Offered? In January, when the furnace broke and you called me at midnight because the house was freezing, who paid that bill? In March, when Mom cried because the repair guy wouldn't come until the invoice cleared, who covered it? In September, when Mandy burned through her savings on that ridiculous podcast scheme and you couldn't afford oil for fall, who paid again? He says nothing. Family is family. He finally mutters. But Mandy really needs calm right now. She's been through a lot. I stare out the window. Snow has started falling, light, soft, almost apologetic. I've been through a lot, too. I whisper. But I never got to be the one everyone protected. His voice sharpens with impatience. Don't make this awkward. It's not personal. I grip the edge of the table. Then don't expect another dime from me this winter. I pause. If I'm not part of the family, don't treat me like the backup plan. I hang up before he can respond. The screen goes black. The room is silent again, except for the whisper of snow against glass. I sit on the bed, hands clasped, thoughts a tangled mess. That short phone call loops in my mind like a broken tape. They really did it. Excluded me from Thanksgiving like it was rescheduling a dentist appointment. I glance at a photo on the shelf, me and my parents in 2019. My first year working at the shipping company. I'd taken a 6-hour bus ride home just to sit at the table, eat Mom's roast chicken, and listen to Dad complain about football. Back then, that warmth felt like something real. Now, it feels like fiction. I walk over to my desk and open the laptop. The wind howls outside, slipping through the loose frame. I log into the utility account, the one I created for them last winter after Mom said they couldn't afford heating oil. I was the one who paid the bills. Quietly. Every month. $2,400 last year. $4,800 this year. Not because anyone asked, but because I thought I should. I opened the Excel sheet where I tracked every transaction. The last line reads, $400 January. Sent ahead of the cold. I wonder if they even remember. Mandy, meanwhile, blew through $16,000 chasing a dream she never planned. Her artisanal candle brand was a disaster. Bulk orders from Texas, overpriced labels, 0 customers. But instead of confronting her, they just smiled and said, she's young. Mistakes happen. I didn't argue. I just kept sending money. While she posted $7 lattes and Zara hauls, I pulled double shifts loading freight, nursing a sore back. I almost texted her once why, but stopped myself. Maybe some things aren't meant to make sense. Back at the screen, The cancel button blinks. Just one click to end the automatic payments. I wait a moment, not because I'm uncertain, but because I want to remember what it felt like to matter. And then I click. A notification appears. Service canceled. Heating ends November 2nd. For weeks before Thanksgiving. I close the laptop and step to the window. Snowflakes drift down, silent and steady. Each one as weightless as my dad's voice on the phone. But enough of them? They can freeze a house. They'll notice eventually. Mandy will shrug it off, insulated by her own self-importance. Mom will pretend it's fine, until her fingers go numb while chopping vegetables. And Dad? He'll get mad. He always does. But this time, the cold won't be my responsibility. A strange hollowness settles in me. Not regret, exactly, just the quiet aftermath of letting go. But beneath it, something firmer, resolve. For the first time in years, I'm not the one shivering for someone else's comfort. 4 days later, the first message arrived. Mom, Emily, the heating system's acting weird. Can you check it for me? I stared at the screen, then set my phone down. No reply. That evening, Mandy texted. Just 2 words, so childish. No greeting, no explanation, just judgment. She probably expected me to react, to scramble for justification, maybe even to apologize. Instead, I put my phone on silent. On the 7th day, Dad called. I let it ring out. 3 minutes later, a voicemail. Emily, I don't know what's going on. The house is down to 58 degrees. If you know anything, call me. His voice carried that mix of frustration and worry he used when things stopped going his way. I didn't listen to the message again. Instead, I walked to the bookstore on Lake Street, bought a novel, and spent the afternoon in the cafe next door. The heater roared, the scent of cinnamon waffles drifted through the air, and for once, I let myself enjoy something I'd always postponed. Time for myself. On the 10th day, an unknown number flashed across my screen. I picked up. Hi, is this Miss Emily? We're calling about the heating oil service at 422 Elm Street. The contract was under your name. Will you be renewing? No, I said simply. The contract was canceled and won't be renewed. I'm no longer responsible for that house. A pause on the line. Just to confirm, you're not continuing payments? I looked out the window where the street lay hushed under a layer of snow. That's correct. By November 14th, the text came fast. Mom, it's only 50 degrees in the house. Your dad won't wear a coat, and Mandy's coughing nonstop. Please call me. Dad, this isn't about money. This is family. Mandy, fine. Just pretend you were never part of this family. I read them. I didn't reply. I saved each one. Little artifacts of where I once poured in everything and what I got back. On the 16th day, a snowstorm swept through Minneapolis. The news warned everyone to stay inside. Some areas lost power. I sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, hot cocoa in my hands, the space heater humming beside me. The wind howled through the city, but my apartment stayed warm. I wondered, were they huddled together under mismatched blankets in the living room? Were they thinking of me, not as a bank account but as a person? The one who quietly kept their world from freezing for 2 winters? Maybe. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I set my phone aside, pulled my chair closer to the heat, and opened my book. The first line made me pause. You can't warm a place where they always saw you as the cold wind. I smiled. Since the cutoff, each degree the temperature dropped brought another round of messages. November 17th, Mom. 54 degrees inside. Your dad's coughing won't stop. He won't take medicine. Can you call someone? I set the phone down. On the stove, potato and celery soup simmered, fogging up the windows. The smell wrapped around the room like a second blanket. Outside, the temperature dipped below freezing. But inside, I turned on the oven, poured a cup of cinnamon tea, and wrapped myself in my thickest sweater. I wasn't angry. I wasn't gloating. I was just finally choosing peace. November 19th, Dad called 12 times. I didn't answer. A message followed, call me back. This isn't a joke. I laughed quietly. To them, I was still the fixer. The quiet solution. The daughter who didn't need thanks, just tasks. But even kindness, when taken for granted, runs out. That same day, Mandy posted a photo, her socked feet in front of a space heater. Cold enough to feel like we live in a freezer, the caption read. I scrolled past it. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel anything. Just the truth. They were trapped in the freeze. They chose the moment they told me not to come home. November 21st, Mom again, her voice cracking. Emily, it's down to 40 degrees. Your dad's sleeping in his coat. My hands are so numb. I can't even do the dishes. Can you please help? I was buttering bread for grilled cheese when the voicemail came through. The scent of melted cheddar and browning crust filled the kitchen. The oven glowed softly. I didn't answer. Each buzz from the phone broke the silence of my meal. I glanced once or twice, then went back to eating. I wasn't glad they were cold. I wasn't happy they were struggling. But I also wasn't responsible for fixing it anymore. Not after years of being treated like the family's emergency fund, without consent, without respect. November 23rd, 2 days before Thanksgiving, a final text from Dad. If you still consider yourself part of this family, now's the time to prove it. I stopped mid-chop, onions half sliced on the cutting board. I looked out at the porch blanketed in snow. That house, where I learned to ride a bike, where I wrapped my first Christmas gift, sat cold now. But when I pictured it, I no longer saw myself inside. I poured more hot water into the teapot and let the steam rise. I thought of Mandy calling me useless for not funding her failed fashion magazine idea. Of Dad telling me I was too sensitive for speaking up about being excluded. Of Mom, who always looked away just to keep the peace. I had been silent for too long. That night, I curled up on the couch with a book and a fleece blanket. The room glowed softly from a single lamp. It was enough. My phone kept ringing. I didn't answer. Because sometimes the only way for people to realize you were holding the whole thing together is to let go. Thanksgiving morning arrived quietly. I woke before dawn. The city was wrapped in snow and silence. No cars. No voices. Just the wind drifting over rooftops. I made coffee. Toasted bread. Sliced an orange. No turkey. No mashed potatoes. I didn't want anything that reminded me of the kitchen I used to belong to. Because this year, I wasn't serving anyone but myself. That holiday, I chose simplicity. Not because I lacked anything, but because I no longer felt the need to pretend everything was as it used to be. By 10 a.m., I was curled up on the couch, a soft blanket over my legs, coffee warming my hands, a documentary playing quietly on the TV. The peace felt unfamiliar, almost surreal. For a moment, I forgot the emotional chaos of the past few weeks. Then the doorbell rang, sharp and unrelenting. I knew before I even checked. I walked slowly to the door and looked through the peephole. There he was, my father, wrapped in a worn gray coat, cheeks red from the cold and frustration. His eyes carried that old look I knew too well. Not remorse. Expectation. I opened the door just a crack, letting a stream of warm air brush against his face. Emily, he said, breath fogging in the air. We need to talk. I leaned against the doorframe, hand still on the knob. I don't think today's the right day. You cut the heat, he said flatly. The house is freezing. Your mom's sick. Mandy's locked herself upstairs. It's 38 degrees. I didn't flinch. I didn't cut anything. I stopped paying. That's not the same thing. He frowned. You know we're not good with this stuff. The contract was in your name. When you canceled, we didn't even get notified. I stayed calm. I paid for 2 years. Over $8,000. Then, one phone call, and I was cut from dinner for Mandy's piece. So now maybe you can handle the rest. He blinked, caught off guard. Maybe he hadn't expected me to remember every dollar. But I did. Every bill. Every skipped meal. Every freezing morning I stood at the bus stop to make my shift on time. Emily, don't make this harder than it has to be, he said. It's a misunderstanding. Mandy's had a rough year. I sighed. Mandy has rough years because she creates them, and I get shoved out to keep her comfortable. I stayed quiet when she dropped out of that creative academy after 2 months. When she borrowed money, and ghosted me. But when I was excluded from a family meal because of her fragility, that was the end. He was silent for a moment, then lowered his voice. We have no money, Emily. We've sold almost everything. Your mom's running a fever. We called the heating company, but we can't afford the upfront cost. Cold air slipped through the doorway, but I didn't move. You told me to stay back for Mandy's peace. I did. And I found some peace of my own. He gripped his hood tighter, his face hardening. You're punishing the whole family over one bad moment. I opened the door just a little more, letting him see the warmth behind me, the cozy apartment, the soft light, the gentle hum of the heater. This isn't punishment, I said. It's just the natural result of being pushed aside when you are no longer useful. He stared at me, then turned and walked away through the snow. I closed the door. The lock clicked shut, solid and final. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, I poured another cup of coffee. And for the first time in years, I wasn't shaking anymore. A week after Thanksgiving, I got a call from my cousin Haley, the one relative who'd always stayed in touch, who never played favorites with Mandy. Her voice came through loud and clear over the speaker, with wind hissing in the background. I just talked to Aunt Claire. Things are worse than I thought. I sat at the table, hands wrapped around a steaming mug of ginger tea. Mandy's moved out, Haley said. Her boyfriend dumped her. She stayed with a friend for a few days, but now she's crashing on a couch in Eden Prairie. I wasn't surprised. Mandy always made the world orbit around her, until everyone got tired and drifted away. What about my parents? I asked, voice steady. Your mom's staying in a cheap motel off Highway 52. Real rundown. She's got mild pneumonia. Your dad sold Grandpa's watch collection to cover a few days of heating oil. My grip on the teacup tightened. That collection had once been proudly displayed in a glass case, our grandfather's most prized possession. Now reduced to listings on resale sites. Another thing lost. You okay? Haley asked gently. I'm okay, I said after pause. Just a little sad about how it all ended. I'm not, she replied. You did the right thing. If people only show up when they need you, that's not family. That's convenience. We talked for a few more minutes before saying goodbye. I stared at my phone, now dark, its screen reflecting my face in the dim kitchen light. Not angry, not bitter, just clear. In the days that followed, life settled. Mornings began with coffee. I worked my shifts at the distribution center, stopped by the market in the afternoons for fresh bread and winter fruit. Evenings were for reading, listening to jazz records, and sometimes catching up with Haley. I never heard from Mandy, Mom, or Dad again. After that day on my doorstep, the messages stopped. Haley later told me the house on Ashwood Street had been listed for sale. They couldn't keep it through the winter. Sometimes I dreamed of that kitchen, where Mom used to bake pies, where I did my homework at the table, where Dad once read the paper every morning. But in my dream, it was always the same now. Cold, quiet, and empty. And I wasn't in it anymore. I didn't feel angry anymore. Just quiet. I looked around, then gently closed the door behind me. I wasn't angry with them, truly. But I no longer felt sorry either. Maybe because I had known cold too. The difference? I learned how to build my own fire. In early December, Haley called again, laughter and exasperation lacing her voice. Emily, you won't believe this. Mandy posted a video online, crying, saying you abandoned your family, making it sound like you're the cruelest person alive. I raised an eyebrow. She did what? She's telling the world you left during a crisis. But of course, no mention of the bills you paid, or how they cut you out of Thanksgiving. I smiled small, wry. Let her talk, I said. People believe what they want. I don't need to prove anything anymore. Haley laughed. God, I love this version of you. Solid. Unshakable. Inspiring. After we hung up, I made a cup of hot cocoa, sat by the window, and watched the snow drift under the glow of the street lamp. The world was still cold, still harsh, but I had learned to stay warm. Not from others, but from clear boundaries and a peace I had earned. That afternoon, the snow lay thick and heavy, coating the small balcony where my lavender pot stood brittle and dry. It was 4 degrees below zero. No one ventured outside unless they had to. I was folding a wool scarf when the doorbell rang. At first, I thought it was a package. But then came a knock, steady, hesitant. I paused, looked through the peephole. My mother. She stood bundled in a puffy coat that nearly swallowed her, scarf tight around her neck, snow piled on her hat and shoulders. She clutched an old handbag, her shoes nearly buried in white. She looked older, smaller, less certain. I cracked the door open, just a few inches. Cold air crept in. "Emily," she said, her voice trembling. From the cold or something deeper. I wasn't sure. "I'm sorry to come like this. I just didn't know how much longer I could wait. Why are you out in this weather?" I took the bus. Walked the rest of the way. Almost an hour. She coughed softly. "But I thought maybe you'd hear me out." I stayed silent. "I've been thinking a lot. About Thanksgiving. About winters before. And I realized I was wrong. Not just that day, but for all the years I let you carry everything like it was expected of you." She looked down at the wet tile where melting snow pooled beneath her. "And Mandy, she regrets it too. She said it shouldn't have gone this far. That you don't owe anyone anything." I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. "Too late, Mom. Everyone says that after I stopped paying. After I stopped being convenient. That's not it." Her voice cracked. "I just want you to know. I see it now. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't stand by you sooner." I studied her. Years ago, those words might have softened me. But wounds left too long become scars, and scars don't feel. "You chose Mandy," I said quietly. "When I needed a seat at the table, you told me to stay back. When I kept the lights on, you comforted her. When I finally lived for myself, you called it punishment. So why now, to ask me to carry it again?" "No," she whispered. "I'm not asking you to come back. I just want you to know you matter. And even if you never forgive me, I accept that." I opened the door slightly, not to let her in, but to let her see. The glow behind me. The warmth I had created without them. A peace earned. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. "But I'm not the same either. I'm not the last branch holding up the tree. I've let it fall. And I'm not going back." She nodded slowly. "I understand." We stood there a few moments longer. Then she stepped away, turned, and disappeared into the snow. I closed the door. Not lighter, not joyful, but sure. I returned to the sofa, pulled the blanket around me, and pressed play on the old jazz track. The saxophone filled the room, warm and slow. And for the first time in years, I didn't need permission to live. January arrived with a hush of snow and sharp wind. The city froze, but my world stayed warm. Early mornings with coffee. Work shifts. Fresh bread. Long walks. Evenings spent reading or knitting by the fire. I hadn't heard from Mom since that day. No calls. Not even the usual New Year message with the stock photo. I didn't miss it. The silence was clean, like air after a storm. Haley kept me updated, the only tether left. "Mandy posted asking for help again," she said one evening. "Says she lost her job, looking for housing. Vaguely blames family tension. Same script, different day." I switched my phone to speaker and kept chopping onions, the scent filling the kitchen, drowning out the drama. "Uncle Mark's selling his SUV," Haley added. "Aunt Claire moved to Des Moines. Says she's rethinking how she raised her kids." "A little late," I murmured. "Yeah," she sighed. "But maybe better than never." And she was right. Some things never change. And some never should be expected to. Cracks on winter ice, best not stepped on. I no longer thought about Mandy every night. I didn't check social media for rumors. I didn't try to explain myself anymore. I just lived. Each morning, I woke up on solid ground. My own. At the end of January, I visited the used bookstore down the block. The owner smiled. "Haven't seen you in a while." "Braving the cold," I replied, picking out a novel about women who left their families to begin again. Back home, I made tea and sat by the fire. The flames danced, orange and calm, against the brick wall. I pulled my blanket close and watched. Somewhere, the old house might still be cold. Maybe they borrowed heaters. Maybe Mandy was filling out aid forms. Maybe Mom lay curled under layers of regret. But I didn't belong there anymore. The fire crackled as if in agreement. I reached for my tea, the steam softening my view. But my heart, clearer than ever. Winter would stay. Snow would fall. But this time, I wouldn't be the one left shivering.